Hey, hi, hello, welcome to episode 112 of Trail Society, brought to you by Rabbit. I'm Corinne Malcolm.
I'm Keely Henninger.
And I'm Hillary Allen.
Keely, did you get a tan this weekend?
I sure hope so. Do I look tan?
I don't know. I feel like I saw a lot of good tan lines post race from people. Speaking of, Keely was over in Arizona at Javelina outside of Portland, which I think was probably having an atmospheric river event like
Hmm.
Seattle was. So great timing for your escape.
Yeah, I got texts from both JT and a couple of my athletes who live in the Pacific Northwest, and they were like, wow, cool timing. Like, I mean, this was the best case scenario. I definitely got tan lines. I don't know how tan I got, but you know what? I'll take anything this time of year because we're going into pasty season. So anything I can get.
Yeah, you were dry. I'm working with Jenny Quilty right now. She's training for this race in Hong Kong. And so she had like pretty big volume, like back-to-back long runs last week, and it just happened to line up with the atmospheric river. And it was like a 6 and a 4. And she
Ugh.
did 6 hours on Friday in
Oh
the rain. And I
gosh.
was like, I also had a long run that day, and I was like, yo, I know how wet that was. You're so strong. Like, damn. So we're drowning over here in the PNW. Hillary, how have you been?
Actually, the reason I couldn't go is I had a pre-existing commitment, so I was actually in the Bay Area also getting rained on. So, not as much as the atmospheric river, but yeah, I was definitely like tuning into the live stream so I could follow along and Javelina stuff. Although I heard it was like a cooler year
I
than in
mean,
past.
it was cooler than previous years, but it was still hot.
Of course,
Just
yes.
like Western states has cool years, it's still hot. But yeah, I think the high was like 83 or 84 degrees Fahrenheit,
Which in the
which
past
is
has been like
definitely
100.
cooler.
Yeah, I
Yeah, it's
think
normally
most
in
years
the
it's like in
90s.
the 90s.
Yeah.
Last year, though, it was particularly hot and it was
Hmm.
like up to just about 100, just over 100 degrees. So, like, last year
Yeah.
was like an extreme hot year.
Hmm.
Most years it'll peak in the 90s. And then
Right.
this year was like a quote unquote cool year, but it still was sunny. It's not like it was overcast.
Exactly. Yeah. It's still the desert. It's still warm.
Oh, guys, believe me, I know. I was just making a comment that it seemed a little bit cooler. The times were
No,
so
for sure.
fast.
Yeah, it was a lot
Yeah,
cooler. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
It's just
we are
like
transitioning to
I
fall.
think from my perspective, being boots on the ground, there were some people who like took the cooler year as like being cold and didn't
yeah.
like cool off, and there was lots of carnage. You're
There
like, no,
was.
it's still cold, just or it's still hot, just like Western states. It's a cool year. It's like, oh, it's in the 90s. It's still really hot, so you still have to like
Yeah,
respect the heat, but it's like maybe the heat's not gonna trip you up as much as it would if it was really hot.
yeah,
If you still like prepare for it. But
yeah.
yeah, there was some carnage from people who aren't quite expecting it to be too hot.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It was that there are lots of carnage, I feel like, particularly on the women's side this time around.
Mm.
But I think there is some of that. We'll talk about this maybe a little bit later, but I think there is. I feel like there used to be a lot of carnage, and then we were like, oh, there's no more carnage anymore. People are running so smart and taking care of themselves. And then I feel like we've gone back to there being carnage again because people are like
Yeah.
going out so aggressively because you quote
Yep.
unquote like have to go out aggressively to contend for the wind. And someone's gonna contend for the win, someone's gonna win, but the other people in that group aren't necessarily going to stick it. So it's like,
Hmm.
I think we're
Yeah,
back to seeing some attrition, back to
I think
seeing some
so.
carnage.
Yeah, I mean the races are so fast now that you have to go out kind of fast to be up there. But yeah, to your point, it's like, oh, who if you're in first in the first lap, did either of those people win? I don't think so.
No. I guess you were out in the desert.
Yeah.
You, before we hit record, you did say you saw several of our sun hoodies,
Hmm.
the rabbit sun hoodies out on course. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my our crew station was close to start finish line, so I got to see all the start and finishers coming through, and I saw probably at least four sun deflector hoodies in green or yellow. We saw so many of the ice bandanas, a couple hats. I did a nice Trail Society shout to whoever I saw who was wearing those things, and so it was really cool to see everybody wearing them. A lot of you actually asked me if there were any left, and there are some sun deflector hoodies left in sizes extra small, small, and extra large. And then there's a couple of the tank tops I was wearing, the black tank in extra small and small. And then there's a couple of the crew necks left. So you can go back over to rabbit.com, runinrabbit.com, and go to our Trail Society collection. We'll link it in the show notes. And you can grab yourself some. We have a code for November. It's Fall Trail 10, like fall of the season, FALLTRAIL 10 for 10% off. And you can grab some of those things. And everyone who I talked to who was wearing the deflectors loved them for the race because when you're in the desert, you have the perks of evaporative cooling, but sometimes it's like to your detriment because everything just evaporates off you so quickly that if you're wearing like a long sleeve and you can keep yourself wet the whole time, that'll actually stay cooler a little longer than like your skin. So the deflectors were pretty popular. The long sleeves were pretty popular over there. So head on over to runinrabbit.com and grab some so you can join the squad.
That's so exciting. Yeah, it was so cool to follow along from afar. One of my really good friends, Jeremy, who's really one of my athletes, who's really good friends with Hillary, was there crewing and pacing one of my athletes, Dan, and we got photos of the boys in their Trail Society hats, and that was very cool to see our boys out in the desert or rocking them. I wanted to give some shout outs to some other race results before we dive into Javelina because those it was crazy, like so fast. But my first note in our results section just says lots of Sarahs running very, very far. And that is because in the last 2 weeks, two Sarahs, two British Sarahs actually, have run incredibly far. The first being Great Britain's Sarah Webster, who ran a new world record running an outstanding 173.127 miles, which is like a 20-mile PR for her in the 24-hour event. She's only done one other 24-hour where she qualified back in the spring running 151 miles. Absolutely shredded the world record, broke the world record with 1 hour to go, and then proceeded to add on another 5+ miles to the world record performance. So Sarah Webster,
Dang.
outstanding performance. The Great British Women's Team won the team scoring as well. So just super, super strong all around. Many of us are like, doing 100 miles in 24 hours is a lot. And she ran, yeah, 107 around a 1.5 kilometer loop in France, which takes a whole lot of mental skills, I think, too, to run basically a 1 mile loop for 24 hours.
Mm.
Um, Big's backyard strikes again. We talk about this every single year. Backyard competitions, for those who are newer to trail running, because it is a very niche part of the sport, is a competition, a last man, last runner standing competition, in which you run a 4.1 something mile loop every hour on the hour until there's one person left and they complete one loop by themselves. So not only does one person have to run really, really far, but at least one other person has to run really, really far to get the assist. So this year, the ultimate winner was Phil Gore. He did not break his own world record. He's run, I think, 119 yards before or something like that. But this year he won running 114 yards or 475 miles. And again, running every hour on the hour. You only get to sleep as much as you have time left every lap. So, they basically don't sleep for many, many, many days on end. We have to give a special shout out to Ivo Stuyart of Belgium, who got the assist running 113 yards. And then Sarah Perry of the UK set a new women's best at the backyard event, running 95 yards, which is 395.8 miles. The previous best was 87 yards, and that was held by Megan Eckert of the US. And Eckert this year ran 92 yards. So there were like 3 or 4 women that were deep into like the 80 plus, like 85 plus yards space. So that was really, really, really cool to see. And I cannot personally fathom running that far every hour on the hour for days on end.
Nope.
Hillary's like, no, thank you.
No,
Kaylee's
it's just
like,
so impressive. I mean, just like I get it, like, digestible chunks, like breaking it up to like loops and like, little like you don't think of how far you're going because you don't know when you're gonna stop. But man, just put human
it's a mental
limits.
puzzle. It's a
Hmm.
crazy, crazy mental puzzle.
Mm, yeah.
And it's impressive because not only physically, I mean, because it's like, oh, you only have to run 4 miles an hour. Like that's not fast. But the ability to continue to do that and to fuel and to take care of yourself and to sleep minutes every hour at some point in time adds up. Like that
Hmm.
is, yeah. So bless all
Yeah.
those people who do crazy things.
I have no desire to do that.
Something maybe closer to Keely's heart. The Javelina 100 happened over the weekend. That's what we were talking about earlier. That's what Keely was at. And that's what we're going to spend most of today talking about because we had two Rapid Scholarship athletes there, one running the 31K and one running the 100K. Hillary provided mental mindset training for them. I coached Clarivel, who we had on the podcast in 31K. Keely coached Daisy, who ran the 100K. So it was a team effort all around. But outside of those gals, some like crazy records went down on the men's and women's side at Javelina, records that have been around for a couple of years now. John Ray held the previous men's course record. Camille Herron held the previous women's course record. And people have gotten close to them, but really haven't like taken a big swing
Hmm.
at them until this year. And we were talking about how like, yeah, the conditions were pretty ideal, but to break a course record by 30 minutes feels like, is that truly just temperature? Like, what do you guys think about that component of it?
I
Mm.
think it's certainly a
Yeah.
factor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it probably does play a role, but I don't think it plays a 30-minute role. So it's like this person was clearly set up from the beginning to break the course record to some degree, and then having a cooler year helped them break it by 30 minutes. Because 30-ish minutes in both the men's and women's races, which is crazy.
Yeah, like maybe the conditions made it 15 or 20 minutes faster, but they
Right.
still had another
Hmm.
10-ish minutes on that, which that to me is like the kind of chaotic part.
Really
And I
cool.
remember I need to look up the specific temperatures, but I think like one of the ideal race temperatures for like, basically heat from your muscles, like cool, like going out into the world, like it's like around, I think 45 degrees or like 50 degrees is like one of the
I'll say it's
ideal.
it's fairly cool
It's
in the
cool,
in the
right? So it's
context of
not
javelina.
80. Like 80 is still like fairly hot. So you have to have like your cooling strategies or whatever. But I think I don't know. Even at that time of year, maybe someone who's more like heat adapted or prepared, you can't break a course record just by conditions alone. It also has to be with, training. I think it's like the perfect storm.
Yeah. And it was. So just like to break it down for you all, Will
Mhm.
Murray, who some of you still will not know because he came on to he's had a breakout year. Ran incredibly well at Black Canyon. No one knew who he was. He was like a baseball coach and a math teacher from New Jersey. I think he's living out in Colorado now. So there's been some life changes this year, but he, tragically, effectively broke his ankle and also maybe had like a heart scare about a month out from Western States this year. And so he did not take the Western States start line. So got a golden ticket in, doesn't get to use it. This is a redemption run for him. So he runs, still definitely the underdog, runs 12, 10, 12. So again, 30 plus minutes faster than the course record. David Roach finishes second. David is definitely the hands down favorite going in. He runs faster than last year. Also goes under the previous course record, runs 12:18:06, and then he manages to hold off because Canyon Woodward, who
Yeah.
finishes third, was
Charging. Oh my
closing,
goodness.
finishing like just under 2 minutes behind David, which was super impressive. Yes, we Canyon. Like that is like very, very, very exciting. David does not take his ticket, rolls down to Canyon. There's speculation that David might do a different golden ticket race later this year. I think he's not ready to say yes to Western States for 2026. And so turn down the ticket here. Maybe that means he changes his mind and tries for a golden ticket at something like
Yeah.
Black Canyon or Canyons.
Did
I
you
don't
see his
think
post today?
I saw his
Because he
post
said
of
that he was thinking of, like, he was like, I wanted to honor my athlete, and I think I'm going to be taking another golden ticket race.
I think if you truly
So
want to get into Western States, you don't turn down a golden ticket.
that's fair for sure. But I think that also it would be a really
Because Canyon
weird,
doesn't want handouts. Canyon doesn't want a handout.
for
Like
sure.
him and
But
David have been
like,
working together for forever. They've got a
what
great
would you do if
relationship.
you had an athlete who, in your brain, you both were fit enough to go 1 and 2, and then you both break the course record by 20 minutes, and someone broke it by 30? Like, as a coach, what would you do? Because I think it's a really hard decision to be like, I'm gonna
I
take
think
that from my
I
athlete
think
that
if
I
you're a
also
coach, I
coach.
think if you're a coach who has
Weird.
decided to race races that your athletes are in, it's fair game.
Yeah. Oh, for
I
sure.
think
I'm
if
just,
you're a
But
coach
I
who's deciding to
I
race
think I
also,
races
would
that
have
you're
a very interesting
he's going to
mental
have
dilemma.
his athletes are going to be at canyons and black canyons too. It's not like he's going to take a ticket not from one of his athletes at a different
but
For
race.
guys,
sure. For
like
sure.
it's David's decision. And if that is like his ethos, like as a coach,
Sure.
like then I think that's kind of cool. I mean, I actually spoke with him over like last weekend at a baby shower for Teddy Bross. Like we're all good friends, and him and Megan were there. And like they said like they're first and foremost coaches. They really liked like Western States. Like David really liked it, but he said maybe I'm like better at these other time trial type races like Javelina and whatever. He says first and foremost, he says he's a coach in the community. So I kind of respect the decision if, and I'm sure,
Totally. But I
I
just
don't
think
think
that
Canyon Woodward would think it's a handout. He worked
no, no,
really hard
no,
for
no, no,
that.
no. But if David goes to Black Canyon or Canyons, he's not taking a ticket from one of his athletes at that race too. Like they coach a lot
Totally.
of athletes in the sport. So it's
Yeah.
Oh,
not
I'm
And
agreeing
like
maybe
with you, but I'm
they're the
also
same.
just saying that like I would be in a weird space. So like maybe yeah, he's 90% sure he wants to go to states, so he has that 10% wiggle that he's like, actually, I'm not
Yeah.
100%, so I'm gonna give this right now.
yeah. I
To
mean,
some
I
to the
think
athlete that really wants to go, you
Yeah,
yeah,
know?
I think
exactly.
but again, I think if you're coaching athletes and you know you're going to the same races, that's a choice that you've made as well to like do
Totally.
that. And I think for a long time David chose to not do some of these races for whatever reason. Maybe it was to not race his athletes, but I do think that that's part of it.
Yeah. I would never
And
coach someone that I'm competing against. Absolutely not.
so I think that's a conversation, right? It's like, well, I coach a couple of elite women, but I mostly coach elite men. And so it's like we're not in
Yeah.
competition with each other. But I think that it's like, and this is like a lot of speculation on our part. I think it's a great story. I think it's an excellent story. I think it like feels really good. But I think that more than anything, Dave on the podcast has said, like, I don't know if I want to go back to Western states.
Mhm.
Like he's been all fall, all summer, has been like, yeah, I don't know if it's for me. Like that was a really hard experience. I don't know if it's for me or not. And
Well,
so that's
then, yeah,
also a piece of the puzzle. Like if
Totally.
you're not
Yeah.
100% sure, yeah, don't take the ticket. Give it to
Yeah.
this person who really wants it. Like awesome. But I want to say that like I think even if it wasn't Canyon in third and it had been someone else, I still think David would have turned down the ticket.
Yeah.
Like
I guess we'll never know.
I think that ticket was rolling from David independent of who the third place guy was.
and maybe it was just
Yeah.
sweeter that it was one of
Oh,
his
it was so
athletes. Yeah.
sweet. It was like
Yeah.
beautiful and
More.
like
Yeah.
romantic and it was a rom-com. Like it was great. Like that we can't take that away from the story for sure. I just don't think from everything that he has said publicly anyway, it
Yeah.
really doesn't sound like he's mentally ready to go back to Western states yet. And maybe by the time February rolls around or April rolls around, that hunger to go back there is a lot bigger. And he hasn't had to spend 6 months, 8 months knowing he's going to this race, which I think caused a lot of pressure and stress for him that
Totally.
we saw play out on race day too. So I think having that separation of potentially not knowing you're going, like David mentally from seeing him time trial, I feel like him getting a golden ticket at Canyons and only having to think about Western States for 6 weeks is way easier than getting a ticket at Javelina and dwelling and ruminating and having to hype yourself up for 6+ months. Like that is really hard. Actually, I think the Javelina ticket winners have that on their backs for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
We'll never know. It was
We will
beautiful, but
never know.
we'll never know. Record breaking on the women's side as well. Tara Dower, Candy Mama, shows up after dropping out of the Mammoth at mile 85 or 87 or something like that, and shows once again that she has an absolute ton of speed, breaking Camille Herron's record by 30 plus minutes, running 13:31. I was like, someone might be able to like nudge under 14 hours, but I didn't expect anyone to run 13:31.
Even the projection had her at like 13:48, 13:44, and then all of a sudden I wasn't even expecting her. She just comes around the corner at 13:30. I'm like, what? Where did
Yeah,
you come from?
she ran
So cool.
really,
And
really
she wore a
fast.
costume, so like huge kudos because I was
Hmm.
complaining to a lot of people that like it's so lame nobody wears costumes because you could throw in a pair of kitty ears, put a little face paint on, and do like a fun tank top, and that's not gonna mess with your race. You know what I mean? It's like
That's what she
Javelina. You
did.
gotta have a little
She
fun.
had kitty
I know
ears. She
she
had kitty
crushed
ears and
it. I
paint.
think it's amazing. So I feel like double kudos because you crushed it and you were dressed up in like festive spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really special. And it was redemption for her too, because she's
hmm
run Javelina before and had to drop out. There's that epic photo of her just covered in cacti from a couple years
hmm
ago. So I think that that was also very important. Also, I listened to her interview with Finn Melanson today. It's a great interview. It's only like 35 minutes long. You should go check it out over on Single Track. But they talk a little bit about, I forget how much disappointment she probably felt this year because in my mind, she had a great season. But she, wins Black or doesn't win Black Canyon, gets second at Black Canyon, gets a golden ticket, wins Lake Sonoma 50, setting a course record for the current course of Lake Sonoma 50. Um, Gets sick before Western States, drops out of Western States. Doesn't get into Hard Rock, is like the last person on the wait list to not get in. does the long trail, so huge success in Vermont, and then pulls out a mammoth 285 miles in. So in my mind, I'm like, man, she's had such a great like year, like
Mm-hmm.
super impressed with her going AT to Black Canyon, but recognizing actually like listening to her talk about working with Danielle, her like
Mm-hmm.
her mind work coach, talking about how like the goal was to finish it. And that even Tara Dower needs to have the goal to finish it was super interesting.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's fair. It's so thinking about like the sport, it's so easy to fall in that cycle of DNFing, right? Because if you do it a couple times, that just could become ingrained in there as like a default, which I
Yeah,
know I've felt before from DNFing a race. You like go into the next one, you're like, is this going to happen again? And there's so
that's
much like
stressful.
clarity and so much like relief that must come from just going in with a goal to finish. Because like that's a goal we can do, right?
It's approachable.
Right. And so it's really cool. She's like, I didn't look at my watch. I just ran as hard as I could sustain for a long time and wanted to finish. And like, that's really cool and probably very
Yeah.
freeing to have that mindset instead of going in like, oh, I must win this race. It's like, no, I
Yeah.
must
But
finish this race.
well, I think it's just the difference between setting external versus internal goals. And the ones that are internal are way more achievable
Totally.
and motivating to do. And I think, I mean, if we've all experienced it. If you're at a high level or, have pressures from outside, it starts to turn into outside pressure. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, that's a great reminder to everyone that it's like,
Hmm.
it's just you versus you.
Yeah. Yeah. Super, super cool to see. I mean, she had a what, something like a nearly like an hour buffer
Hour. Hmm.
between her and second. And what's crazy is that Beth McKenzie, who finished second, 45 years old, mama too. She that was her first ever 100 mile, and it was the fifth fastest javelina ever.
So cool.
Like just a baller mom. She owns Win Republic, which is like more in the triathlon space, but they make running apparel as well. The
Hmm.
the like the
Her
the
outfit was very cute.
that's her
Yeah.
shit. And that's the colorway they just launched, like that really beautiful lavender color. I was like, ooh, great marketing moves, Beth. Like that's wonderful. She's American, lives in Australia, is still heavily involved in the triathlon scene. But really cool. She is in a position where she in triathlon had a doping suspension that they it was one of those things where it was like you could never they tried to prove contamination. They couldn't prove contamination. They gave her a 2-year ban. She
Hmm.
and like in talking to her, I don't get like and this is my own personal bias showing. I got to meet her in person at Terraware this year. She is so freaking lovely. She's really wonderful. Know nothing about the aughts of triathlon by any means, but because of that, she's ineligible for a Western States spot because the Western States rules
Mm-hmm.
currently state if you have served it, well, sort of is ineligible. I believe the rules are stated as if you have served more than a 3 month suspension, which is
Hmm.
a change. It used to say any infraction, which is why we've had, people who got like a slap on the wrist and were told like you have a public warning, like they were ineligible to compete as of
Hmm.
like 2 years ago. Addie Bracy, as of 2 years ago, would be ineligible to compete at Western States because she was given a public warning by USADA
Hmm.
when she was like, "Oh, I did take an IV this week because my doctor told me to because I was sick, but I went to an IV clinic. Or I went to an IV place, not a
Mm-hmm.
hospital,
Hmm.
and I don't have a TUE for it." And they gave her a
Hmm.
public warning.
Hmm.
That used to be a no-no for Western states, which felt very, very extreme. And they're obviously like, I am anti-doping. I don't want a double negative there. I am not pro doping, but I do think that there's like shades of gray when it comes to some of this stuff as well. Intent, intentionality, type of substance, etc. Culpability in all of it as well, mindset. So I do believe the current rules state that if you've served more than a 3 month suspension, they have the right to say that you can't compete at Western
Hmm.
states.
Nice.
I do believe it is written that way so that athletes potentially who fall into a gray zone, someone like Beth McKenzie who might have a decent case actually could petition the board for a spot. I don't think she wants to do that. She didn't it didn't sound like going into this race that was something that was on her mind. She
Hmm.
just wanted to run a 100-mile race in the desert and run against competitive folks. Um, but in theory, I believe that she's eligible to do something like that. But she let the ticket roll and it rolled to Addie Bracy, who is back, baby. I feel like Addie's been kind of slogging it out in the mountains for a couple of years and returned in a way to her roots and ran 14:45, had a super smart run. Attrition happened around her. She got stronger.
Hmm.
got that roll down golden ticket to Western States and will be on the start line in June. And that to me is like a very full circle moment for Addie.
Yeah, it was really cool to see her just keep moving up all day.
Yeah.
I also want
She
to give
seemed
a
very
teeny
patient.
shout out to Amy Cameron. She's like Goo's rep for it just she got seventh in her first 100. She just kept
She
moving
ran
up all
really
day
well. She
too. I
ran
know.
super, super well.
So cool to see.
Yeah, I was like, okay, 15. It was like what, 15:20 maybe? Something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like
In her
ran
first
really, really
100.
great.
So cool.
Monster. Super talented. She's really good on the bike, but she does some running, and the running that she does is very good, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
huge shout out. Okay, let's transition to some more nitty-gritty Javelina vibes, what you were doing on the ground there, Keely. Our experience watching it, I was at a wedding, so I was just refreshing the live results. That's all I could do. I couldn't pull up the live broadcast. Hillary was in San Francisco. What were the vibes like on the ground? You've been to Black Canyon, but have you been to Javelina before?
Yeah, I was at Javelina 1 or 2 years ago for Jeff Stern, my friend. He was racing and I went and
Oh,
paced and crewed
nice.
him. Yeah, so I'd been there before. But vibes are super high. I think I was texting Rachel Drake or somebody and I was just like, man, okay, I think I'll sign up for Western States. Just like the vibes are so high at Javelina. It's literally like my favorite kind of vi environment. I love the desert. I love running in the desert. So I like, got to like run in the desert. And then you're at Javelina headquarters the day before the race. Everybody's there. Everybody's so stoked. And so yeah, like if you've never been to Javelina, it's a very cool one to go to. I also just love it because it does draw a lot of different kind of people because in terms of a trail race, it's very approachable, right? Like it's easy for crew. It's a very generous cutoff for people who are looking to get their first 100K or 100-mile finish. And so I just kind of love that it draws so many people. The vibes are so high. Yeah, I love it. I'm already
Yeah,
missing the desert.
I pulled a question up immediately as soon as you said talked about texting Rachel Drake. You were there crewing and supporting the gals who got the Rabbit Scholarship, but you also got to like witness things. So tell us a little bit about like, were you like able to keep tabs on what was happening in the Golden Ticket hunt? And I guess more than anything, like it sounds like that excited you about Western States. So maybe tell us about some of those like race weekend feels.
Um, yeah, so I sort of got to watch some of the race. I was in and out a little bit due to crewing for one of our athletes, Daisy, and also I needed to do a little bit of studying. So I missed a little bit of the golden ticket hunt, but I saw them come through the first two times. So the first two loops I got to witness, and then I skipped the third loop, saw the fourth loop, saw the finish of the women. So that I saw it pretty much. I was following it on my phone. I was watching some of the carnage come in, just like, how does this happen every year where like you need to start cooling early and you're not. But it was cool to watch it. The like excitement's really fun. And definitely got me more into wanting to train for something because I haven't really had that pull since States last year. And then also I just got to do some running in the desert and I love running in the desert, so that made me excited as well. Yeah, so I'd say some of it was the electric nature of the race itself, but I'd say a lot of it was being able to run by in the desert on my own and then also being there before the race even started.
Nice. You have until what,
Yeah.
like December 5th to accept your
hmm
entry?
Yeah, exactly.
Who's counting?
I got some time.
I'm counting. You've got a little over a month to make up your
Yeah,
mind.
I'll just have to put it on my calendar at some point because I think if I don't, I'll forget and then I'll miss
Yeah.
it.
Craig might email you if he doesn't see your name pop up there as
That's
well.
fair.
I
That's
feel like
fair.
I can see Craig being like, "Hey, so coming back." That's really excited. So you were joined by the Rabbit team, and Clarivel and Daisy, our two scholarship recipients. Can you tell us a little bit about like before we hit record, it sounded like Daisy had some last minute crew changes, for example. So your role went from like being a hype person to being very heavily involved in like crewing and pacing. So what was kind of your role joining the team for this event weekend?
Yeah, so Friday I was definitely hype woman, like kind of hung out at the booth, got to talk to people about their Trail Society swag, see a lot of more flowers in the wild. It was amazing. But then yeah, I got to help Clarabelle and Daisy kind of get situated, get their bibs. And just like Daisy brought her whole setup for the race, so we set all that up on Friday. She's way more organized than I am, and so I was like, "Oh, this is amazing! Like, this is the most organized race setup I've ever seen in my entire life." Which was amazing. And so yeah, I got that all set up with her. And then basically, yeah, her friend had decided that they couldn't come. And so I was the solo crew because before I was just going to be kind of secondary crew, and then also was going to be first up for pacing if Daisy wanted a pacer. And so I told her, just let me know during the race if you want a pacer because it's totally up to you, and I'm 100% down to join you. And so then, yeah, race day kind of just, yeah, went off without a hitch. We met there, a little bit before the race started, got everything kind of situated, and then she was off. Daisy was off because she was the one doing the 100K. And then, yeah, we were her crew. And luckily, we got to use the Rabbit tent for our crew headquarters. So there
Awesome.
was another Rabbit employee who was racing the 100 mile. There was another Rabbit kind of like a store owner who works with Rabbit a lot who was racing, and they both were using the tent too. So there was a really good squad there who were kind of like helping all hands on deck when people would come in. So, how that goes, which was amazing because crewing as a one person team isn't like the easiest thing. I mean, Daisy made it so easy, so I would have been totally fine without any help, but it was nice to just have a couple other people around to be like, "Oh, can you grab that while I'm doing this?" Like that was really helpful. But yeah, it was super fun. It was really cool to be there for both of them. And then Clarivel's race didn't start till 6:30 p.m. the night of the Saturday. And so that was a night race, her first ever trail race. And so that start line obviously is so energetic, filled with vibes that are super high. It's like a full on rave in the desert. And so seeing that was cool too. Unfortunately, I had to miss her finish, but yeah, it was
Yeah,
really
that
great.
was there was the a last minute call out for a headlamp for her the race week and got a headlamp
Nice.
on her head, but it was yeah.
Perfect.
I was like, "Ooh, first trail race, first time like running at night." So a lot going on, but what a fun place to experience that as well. Like a very supportive, fun environment as far as like you're kind of thrown into like a desert. So for those who've never been to Javelina, this year and last year there was also a drag show that Hoka sponsors at the event. Like literal Phoenix drag queens come out. And my favorite moment from last year, I dropped out of the 100-mile race because my hip flexor was really messed up. And I got to follow my now boss, Chloe, around as she guided these drag queens who are all like 6'4" through the maze of tents, which looks like a I don't know, like a refugee settlement. Like it's just a bunch of tents in the desert. Like you're out in the middle of nowhere. And there are these big, tall drag queens in Hokas walking through all these tents. And there's like people offering people jello shots and like runners laying down taking naps and costumes and watching these drag queens go around and give out like the blue ribbons to the best decorated tents was a highlight of my desert experience last year because I was like, they have no idea what event hired them to be part of it. And they came back out again this year,
Mhm.
which I was like, okay, they weren't scared away by our like super weird Burning Man running situation.
No, and they give out the awards for the best costume too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which was pink.
Kyla's Gordy was pretty
Was
awesome too.
last. Yes, it was amazing. I was just gonna say because she won last year
As Laz.
as
Yeah.
Laz, and then this year she was Gordy. It was hilarious. Unfortunately, she didn't win this year. Pink Pony Club won this year, and it was a whole pack of them. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, you can't beat the Pink Pony Club. That's pretty spot on for Javelina. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And then Jubilee, the race director, comes out in a new
Oh
costume
yeah.
like every hour.
So impressive.
Yeah. So people go all out on this thing. I don't own enough sparkles to be there. I've got to up my costume box game. I think, Hillary, I want to pivot to kind of some of your pre-race chats with them. You kind of came in as a Keely and I provided kind of like the general training outline and training guidance. And so I'm just really curious to hear, what you were working with them on or what you feel comfortable sharing from that as far as like, what did you tell them to take into race week with them?
Yeah, and it was a really fun process because it's just like anything with coaching. It's like you have to check in, weekly, bi-monthly basis. I always confuse those two. But yeah, so obviously it's very individualized with Clarivel and Daisy of what we were talking about. So kind of our initial neck points, whether it was with self-talk or, obviously with Claravel's situation, it's like there's certain things that she can't change. She just has to kind of figure out a way to accept it and move forward. And I mean, first and foremost, like Daisy and Clairville have always had like they already are practicing this in, real life. So they were doing it already. And it's just kind of a way of fine tuning it. But it's specifically for the race itself, kind of just general high level. Some things I talked with each of them about was, going into the scary thing, like it's okay to feel nervous, but like reframing it into it's like, oh, that's just my body telling me I'm ready. And then kind of going into the race itself, control the controllables, and that can be anywhere from, the tangible things like your hydration and fueling, but also to your effort and most importantly, your attitude. So if anything, happens during the race, it's like it's this mindset of problem solving rather than, catastrophizing, which can, go down a negative rabbit hole and that can influence your perception of effort, to be honest. And so another one of that is like staying present. And with that, we could had a few techniques to use, like use your breath, like focusing on your either physical senses. This is something we talked a lot about with Daisy, because like if it got too hot, like she was really concerned about that. And then like staying present by focusing on like if your brain is going to a negative place, putting something positive in there. So that can be like with your breath, but then also, using your breath and your mantras. And I encourage them to pick like different mantras and kind of separate it out for different parts of the race and kind of, repeat that. And the coolest thing with Javelina is it's like laps. So you can do that if you want to have a mantra for lap or, even break it up from there. So honestly, this type of coaching I really like. And it's been fun to implement more of just all the research and stuff I've been reading about in real time too. So,
You're like, this is what I'm studying right now, so it's kind of fun to put it all into
yeah.
practice.
Yeah, and it's like
That's
I've been studying it
awesome.
before, but it's just like now it's so much more information. So
Yeah.
it's like even more.
Yeah, and I guess kind of a question for you, or to get your sense of this too, like big, like huge shout out to Clarivel with like this being her first trail race. Experienced marathoner, literally ran Chicago like 2 weeks before Javelina the
Mhm.
31K there. So no stranger to running long distances, no stranger to asking a lot of her body, but I know that there were some pre-race jitters when it comes to just like doing a trail race, but being really excited to be there. And I'm wondering if you had any advice that was specific to that experience versus Daisy, who I feel like
Yeah.
has a good deal of trail specific experience.
Yeah, we did talk about that. And it was kind of just this whole thing of like needs that all those that excitement and that kind of like and those nerves and to this cue to yourself, it's like, oh, that just means I care. And caring about something isn't bad. It's actually positive and like being curious of like what you can do with that emotion, like in directing yourself into a positive way. And then also reminding her that it's like, it's you versus you. And she knows that, but it's like she's not out there to impress anyone else. It's something that's just for her. And, encouraging her to define what success looks like, right? As I think that's really important for her in her process, just because, she's dealing with a lot on the daily, just to even get through, she can wake up and not know kind of what her illness is going to do that day to impact her training. And like she does a really good job of just having a positive outlook
Lots of
anyways.
opportunistic
So,
running, lots of being kind to
totally.
herself when her guts are
Mhm.
in turmoil more than anything. Keely, I want to ask kind of maybe one like more very race specific question before we kind of end on some vibes and some society slams. But um, you jumped into pace, and I saw on your Instagram story that in true Keely fashion, it seems like maybe you took a digger on in during your pacing duties.
Oh yeah, that was really smart of me. Um, you know, just when you're not paying attention for yourself, it's easy to take a taker. But yeah, it was like mile 4, and I'm just like, oh, this is great. Like, just hobble the rest of the way around. But no, it was totally fine. It's one of those things where it's like when I'm pacing someone, it's not really about me. So in typical Daisy fashion, she was like, "Oh my goodness, let's stop and use my first aid kit." And I had to tell her that no, this is not your problem. This is a me problem. And if we have time at AIDS, I will figure it out. But do not like we're not taking any time from your race for me. I will be fine.
You're like, I fall a lot, actually.
Yeah, so it was really silly, but definitely totally fine. Nothing a couple days given the knee, some space won't fix up. But yeah, it was really cool to be able to pace her. She definitely implemented a lot of the mantras. And had, rode the ups and downs kind of like a champ. She knew kind of what she needed when she was low. She knew to kind of push a little bit when she felt really high, We had a nice burger at mile like 55 because she was so hungry,
Heck yeah.
which was
Oh my goodness.
awesome.
Go
Yeah,
Daisy.
I know because we'd figured out she'd been feeling quite thirsty where she drank two things of ramen, and then another big thing of water. And then she finally felt hungry like an hour after that. And we thought it was because she'd been so dehydrated, she hadn't really been hungry. So it was kind of perfect. So we got to an aid, had a nice burger, nice little reset, and then had a little bit of tummy issues after running so hard for like 4 miles. I was so impressed. But then she just backed off a little bit, like walked a little bit here and there and rolled with those punches too. It was really cool to see. And then, yeah, I think I just kept her company. I didn't let her linger at the aids as much as she probably would have on her own because I was trying to be a little bit of a stickler with as a coach, like, okay, come on, we can do this. But she finished in a time that was either fastest or the same exact time as her loops prior. And so we did not slow down. It was amazing. She pushed through and it was really emotional for all of us to see her finish. Banit from Rabbit came to the finish too. And I think it was really cool for Daisy to have a finish now that she has been diagnosed with MS for 3 years to know that she can do this still because I think,
Yeah.
she's finished around this distance before, but it had been 6 years ago and there's a lot of unknowns since then. And she was just unsure if her body could handle it anymore. And so I think we found out that it can. It might feel a little different than before, but she was so stoked to get that finish done and know that her body can still do this and that she can push herself here and she can show up to start lines and she can show up on finish lines and can motivate kind of the community around her. So it was really cool to be part of that.
That's a huge deal. It's like again, it's about more than the race. It's
Hmm.
that whole experience. I guess not so much talking about like having been filled in the desert and now you're back to Portland, but I just maybe this is a combo question, kind of summarizing everything. Like what are you taking away from the weekend? Like you are exhausted, I'm sure you're behind. Like welcome to Monday. I'm sure that feels really bad, but like what are you taking away from this experience of being out there helping someone like Daisy accomplish this like pretty cool task?
Hmm. Yeah, I think one of the things I'm taking out of this that will be cool for future collabs that we do or scholarships that we do is just that the more people we can help get to that start line, the better, I think. Obviously, I love doing the, two people to the start line of a really specific race, but I think just trying to lower that barrier for a lot more people could be really cool. And it's a really special feeling to get people to start lines who maybe couldn't get there on their own. And so it makes me want to do more of that. It also makes me want to figure out how best to do that and to do that with my schedule so that I don't feel quite as like torn while I'm doing them. But yeah, overall, like I'm really excited for future ways that we can think of doing this for more people too and doing this again.
Yeah, iterations is that combo of like getting more women to the start line, more runners of color to the start line, more people from different walks of life, people who might not have this opportunity otherwise. Like just expanding that community is such a big deal, I think, for all of us. But, and it's also like, how do we do it well as
Hmm.
well, too?
Hmm.
Like, how do we make people feel really supported and grow that community and give them a, like, help, like, yeah, walk through a race experience like that, where it's like Keely Henninger is like making sure they get their bibs on Friday. Like,
Hmm. It was
that's a
really
little different than
interesting.
like paying an entry,
Yeah,
right? Like that's very
for
different than
sure.
just like than just like us being able to fund a number of entries to a race, right? Like there are
For
different levels
sure.
of support. And this is pretty holistic and pretty all in, which we could do for two athletes. And it's like, how do we do that well and get more people to the start line?
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Because like, yeah, in a perfect world, we could do a lot of those, but that's not necessarily feasible for us or for that kind of scholarship to go to a ton of people, right? So yeah, figuring out how to tailor it to do this more often and also keep it true to what we want to do and make it feel like it's worth it for the athlete and we're giving them the best that we can. And then my last one is that, and I hope you guys will relate to this, but I feel like I'm old because I've been in the sport for so long. And I realized that I think this because I saw Sally for the first time in like a year or two. And we got to chat for a really long time for once because like both of our lives have just been so busy. And you're reminiscing on races that you did like 7 or 8 years
A
ago.
decade ago, yeah.
Oh, man.
Mm.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
but it's really cool to still be in the sport for it being that I started when I was 21. It's pretty cool to still be in the sport in some way. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge. So big shout out to Rabbit for making those scholarships possible. It's been a labor of love, a joint team effort there as they have a lot of the resources and product and whatnot. And again, you can give thanks to them by going over to runningrabbit.com and using that fall trail 10 code. Show them some love as well so that we can continue to work on these projects. Shall
mhm.
we slam?
Yeah, I think we should
Ooh.
slam. I think you should take this first one.
Okay.
It's long.
Yeah.
I am ready. Hi, Corinne, Keely, and Hillary, longtime listener of the pod. And I'll say Keely has responded to this person, but we wanted to bring it to the pod as well. Longtime listener of the pod and a huge fan of the work that you all do on behalf of our amazing sport and especially all the work you do around supporting women in our sport. I've been thinking for a long time about writing into you about the topic of how to get more women on the start line at ultramarathons. How timely, especially at the longer distance, like 100 miles. On the heels of listening to a few podcasts that pondered the solutions, as well as just taking UTMB's survey, asking women how they can better be supported in the sport, I want to throw out an idea that I've never heard proposed or discussed, but I think that has real merit for consideration and could make a huge, immediate, and material difference. For some context, I'm a back of the pack runner who successfully qualified for Western States after several attempts of not meeting the qualifying time, and I ran Western States in 2024, an incredible life-changing experience, even though I DNF'd due to missing a time cutoff. People talk a lot about how to get more women on starting lines, and a lot of good ideas have been put forward. But from my perspective, as someone who is strong and capable of running 100 miles, but struggles to meet qualifying times, I want to suggest an idea that I think would actually result in more women entering lotteries and thus ending up on the start line. Having separate qualifying times for men and women, with women receiving longer time allowance for qualifying and longer cutoff times for women both during the race and at the finish line. I know this is a foreign concept in the sport of ultras, but I think but we don't blink an eye when about separate gender time standards in road marathons or any other sport. We openly acknowledge that real gender differences exist between men and women in regards to running speed. In ultras, this is not so different, with obviously some statistical anomalies like Courtney. As we can see a statistically large time difference in finishing times in the top 10 men and women at every major 100 miler in the world. Totally, totally accurate, totally true. That 10% rule is still very relevant here. And they go on to say, so I have a different qualifying standard and by extension, different race cutoff times for men and women in ultras. Do I want the same caliber of runner in both genders to be able to qualify, compete, and finish? If, for example, male runners in the 65th percentile and above are able to qualify for and finish Western States, but only the 70% and above are able to meet the qualifying time and then finish, isn't that the definition of unfair standard for allowing men and women to participate at equal levels? Those are completely arbitrary percentiles I just made up, but I think it illustrates the point that we should be striving to make standards equitable for men and women based on the relative speed of each gender so that we are getting the same caliber of runner within each gender qualifying for starting and finishing ultras. And I just want to say that I think Ironman is also struggling with this right now, and that's been a bunch of the drama around their new qualifying standards as they move the men and women back to Kona jointly for future editions. There's been a lot of like hubbub about this. They go on to say, yes, this would complexity as the sport readjusts and establishes new qualifying standards and new cutoffs for each gender. I actually don't think it'd be that big of adjustment, but I believe it would even out and become the norm pretty quickly. Yes, volunteers may have to spend another hour or two volunteering at an aid station finish line, but as someone who volunteers annually at Western States, I don't think a single volunteer would begrudge giving women a little extra time. We love the sport. We love to give back and we love to support women. Yes, Golden Hour may have to be rebranded as Golden Hours as the back of the pack for both men and women's fields finishes. But if Golden Hour is the best part of the race, why not enjoy it for longer?
Mm.
If we were really serious about getting more women to the start line, I think this would be one of the only immediate solutions to make a material dent in the issue. I think this like is very accurate in a lot of ways. And the other women I've talked to in my running community agree. I appreciate all you do. Okay. Um, this has been talked about in a lot of circles, but this actually came up at Worlds this year where we were looking at the Worlds 80K course and we were like, we saw the time cutoff for it and we were like, there are going to be a lot of women who don't finish this race.
Mm.
And so even at the elite end, we are worried about that. So this is not just a back of the pack issue. This is a sport-wide issue. We've talked to about do we start the entire women's field? Because remember, the entire women's field at UTMB is only 10% of the field. It's like 300 women. It's not that many people. Like,
Mhm.
why don't we start the entire women's field 2 hours earlier?
Mhm.
And they have the same final cutoff time as the
Right.
men, i.e., 46.5 hours. But or 46.5 hours is when the men's race would cut off, but the women then in theory would have
Hmm.
48.5 hours.
Hmm.
Like, would that alone be enough of wiggle room to one, like not have the women's race destroyed by the men's field, and two, and by destroyed I mean like greatly impacted by the men's field because they break
Hmm.
the elastic for the pros, but it would also give women an opportunity to get through those checkpoints in a matter that like
Hmm.
allows that 10% difference in like otherwise gender matched individuals. Like, I don't think it's
Hmm.
unreasonable, and it has been discussed, but it's been hard, I think, in a lot of circles to like continue to work through the complexities of the of like
Hmm.
race week logistics. Um, but I don't think it's crazy, and I actually wouldn't be surprised if some races start to implement that in the next couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the altered start time is a lot more realistic than like an altered golden hour. But like that honestly solves like more of the issues than like a longer race would solve anyways, right? Because a lot of people, especially at something like UTMB, the beginning is the worst part for a lot of people mid to backpack, especially women. You're getting shuffled out of the way by all of these people around you. It's thousands of people. And so
Yeah.
giving them that extra 2 hours to like get out in front of everybody, make the
Yeah.
cutoffs is really would be really helpful.
Yeah, and that's maybe a little different with a night start. I think it's a little bit different when you're talking about starting the women at 3 a.m. and the men at 5 a.m. Like
Yeah.
that feels a little bit hard, but and I do think you do see this at some races where like I know locally here at a number of 50Ks there is an early start. Like Chuckanut has an early start
Hmm.
where they can give you 1 extra hour and you start 1 hour ahead of the rest of the field.
Hmm.
Um, and so
Yeah.
like that does exist in certain places, but I do
Hmm.
think you're right. Like we have fought for a long time to be equal with men, and so it is really hard in a lot of spaces to say we are equal and we expect equitable care, but we need, in order to reach equity, we need different standards.
Hmm.
And so that is like the constant battle, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's well
I mean,
said.
this has happened like cycling too, like the women only start and like Unbound and things like this. Well, because that like obviously can really like drafting can really affect the beginning part of a women's race, but not a perfect system because they catch up.
Yeah. So always working on things, but I do think this is a really relevant topic, and I do think that we will see some of these things be implemented in the future. I don't think it's unrealistic to have different qualifying standards. We've talked a lot about it a lot more in the hard rock context and a lot less about it in the Western States context because the hard rock qualifiers are just so hard. Like the races are so hard. But I do think having that as a broader conversation would be super interesting and incredibly valuable.
Hmm. Yeah,
Sweet.
for sure.
Keely, you reading number two?
Numero dos. Hey, you mentioned ideas for future Run with Rabbit collabs. All right, we love these collab ideas. How about reusable cups for race day? So many races now, you need your own cup, which I love. We need to protect our world, but I would love one with your floral pattern. Flowers on everything.
This is like a Trail Society rabbit hydro pack
Goo collab.
collab.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
some sort of trifecta.
Someone has to make us the cups. This is probably a hydro pack question. We could probably
Mhm.
figure that out.
I think we can figure it out.
Sweet. Hilly, will you take this last one? This one
Yeah,
comes in from a free trail listener.
nice.
So excited. It's a good one.
Yeah. So this is our friendly reminder to listen to our last episode because this listener just listened to the episode with Jill Kolengo, and the whole piece was excellent, she says, or they said, I don't know who it was. There were a few areas that stood out, one of which set red lights blinking and was nearest the end, which was the discipline versus disorder, which I hope you will explore more. The other two areas for me are the questions to ask oneself, the why of what one is doing. If someone makes you feel better, let's say like me, you're
If something makes you feel
if
better.
something, sorry, if something makes you feel better, let's say like me, you're a chronic pain sufferer and your athlete life hours are where you find your peace, escape, pleasure, memory bank for what might occur after. Is it disordered to think more is better as it serves what seems to be a valuable moment in your day? Or if one's athletic life is the process and the implementation strengthens you mentally and physically to face, like me yet again, a surgical recovery, again, would not the draw be to do it religiously to counter finding yourself in a wheelchair? The final point that struck me was what happens when you know what you are doing is problematic, yet because of what you receive because of it, you are unable to change it. Just some thoughts that ran through my mind. These
Yeah,
are really good questions.
it was, yeah. So I brought up this like, you know, I was actually talking at the wedding I was at about something similar. And what we came to was like, is the thing you're doing disruptive to your
Mm,
life?
mhm,
Like, are you unable to be in your relationship, to work your job, to take care of your kids, to function in society, to be social? Like, is exercise or whatever it is it becoming disruptive to your life? Like, that was kind of like our using that as a red flag. And I gave an example back to this listener by a gal I grew up with has a bad autoimmune condition in which when she's pregnant, her autoimmune condition basically goes away and she feels amazing. And otherwise, like she's like kind of miserable.
Hmm.
And she's had 5 kids. And it's like there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that like she is limited in how many kids she can have. Like this is not an indefinite I can have 25 children type of thing. But it has been one of those things where it's like I think she would have had a big family anyway. Like more than likely would have had a big family anyway. But I do think that draw to have more children was probably because she felt way healthier and way better when she was pregnant than she did the rest of the time with her autoimmune condition. And so it's just this like, and as long as you're bumping up against those guardrails of like, is this disruptive?
Mhm.
Like maybe is that the like delineating part? We had a great back and
Mhm.
forth after this message was sent to me, but
I
I
bet,
thought
yeah.
it was worth sharing it here because that is a great question.
It's
mhm.
like where's the point where more becomes detrimental versus more is beneficial and
Right,
therapeutic? Yeah,
right.
totally.
Yeah. And there's a difference between, I think, elite athletes or I mean, not even, I guess, again, part of that conversation with Jill was that like elites and non-elites in the sport do train very similarly, in which we can train a lot of hours, a lot of volume.
Mhm.
And again, maybe it's part of that where is a detrimental thing, but recognizing that with exercise, more is not always more. But in a case of someone dealing with like chronic pain, for example, like the likelihood that this listener is training 20 hours a week isn't terribly high.
Mhm.
So for them, maybe it means instead of
Right.
training 6 hours a week or 7 hours a week, they're training 12 hours a week. And as long as that's like manageable and absorbable and they're fueling themselves and they're taking care of themselves otherwise and it's not disruptive to their life, like is exercising more than they might generically, is that a bad thing or not? Like that's just like it is an interesting wrinkle when it comes to like taking care of ourselves. What is obsessive?
Mhm.
What is like misguided performance adjacent stuff? And what is like just trying to be a human and survive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big
No,
life questions.
yeah, we could talk about this forever.
Yeah, and I do think that like it's like worth pointing out like I love that discipline versus disorder conversation and I think revisiting something like that or something similar in a future episode would be really awesome.
Got some ideas there.
Sick. Okay, well now that we're leaving you pondering with that final society slam, slide into our DMs. Ask us more questions. We're happy to answer them here, or maybe they might become a whole podcast episode, which happens
Never know.
not infrequently. Eat a snack because you've been out running for at least an hour. And until next time, we'll catch you out on the trails.